Hi, it's Molly again. This is the video for Animals 2x2 investigation on big and little worms. Here's a list of the student learning outcomes provided by Boston Public Schools. There's two science and engineering practices that I found really stood out in this investigation. They're practice 1, asking questions and identifying problems, and practice 7, engaging in argument from evidence. Studying the structure of a worm brings up a number of great questions to investigate. Many students are curious about how the worms move, eat, and poop. Some of these questions can be answered by close observation of worms, while others might come to them while reading a book. The other practice that naturally comes up in conversation during this investigation is practice 7. Initially, there's a great deal of debate over which end of the worm is the head or the tail. I encourage students to give me evidence by observing the worms closely to explain why they think each end is the head or the tail. In this investigation, you're going to learn about two different kinds of worms, the red worms and the night crawlers. The red worms are the smaller, more red-brown colored worms, and they're a little bit more smooth than the night crawlers are. Something to keep in mind is that both of these worms are very friendly, but they also have soft bodies, so they need to be handled gently with care. When you're ready to have the class use the worms, please gently dig them out of their terrarium and rinse them with a little bit of water. Worms will probably move around a little bit on the tables, so I recommend using a large plastic tray to place them on. They can still climb out of the tray, but at least it will slow them down a little bit. The other worms that you're going to look at are night crawlers, and they're significantly bigger than the red worms, and they have more of a tannish, peachish color to them. Just like the red worms, they're very friendly, but need to be handled with care. The night crawlers are very fun and squishy, so keep an eye on the worm center just to make sure that they're not getting too much love from your kindergartners. Each worm will begin to slow down and act lethargic after being out for a while, so place them back in the terrarium once you notice this behavior. When comparing big and little worms, I like to use a Venn diagram to organize the information. This can either be done as a whole class activity or individually. If you choose to do it individually, I suggest providing students with a blank diagram, as drawing one can be tricky for some students. You might also want to provide them with a word bank to use as a reference. The great thing about this investigation is that there are a number of ways you can revisit worms throughout the school year. Once the investigation is complete, you might choose to release your worms back into the school garden, where they can help aerate the soil and add nourishment. Students will also enjoy digging up the worms throughout the year. Another option is you can choose to create a vermicompost bin. There are a number of ways that you can find online to build these bins, and this is just one example of what I found during my search. The compost from this bin can be used later on in the year, maybe when you're studying plants in your classroom. One thing to mention when choosing composting materials to feed to your worms is to limit it to vegetables, as fruit can sometimes attract fruit flies. Here's a list of additional resources and books that I like to use during this investigation. The first book that I mentioned, which is called Wiggling Worms at Work, is a really great read, but I recommend splitting it into two different sections as it can be kind of long for younger students. So we have Wiggling Worms at Work, Diary of a Worm, and An Earthworm's Life. Worm Farm is a short video that can be found on pbskids.org. And that's all I have for Big and Little Worms. Thank you.